Here's someone with a crazy claim. A corner of America where kids still ride bikes after dark, nobody locks their car, and local police spend more time rescuing cats from trees than chasing criminals. Sounds like a movie set, right? It's real. And it's sitting quietly in upstate New York, mostly ignored by anyone who isn't already living there. While the rest of the country argues about rising crime and shrinking trust between neighbors, these 10 towns never got the memo. People still wave at strangers, doors stay unlocked overnight. We're taking you through 10 towns where safety isn't a talking point. It's just how life works. Stick around. The safest town is saved for last. Number 10, Windham, Greene County. Windham sits right at the edge of the Catskill Mountains, and for most of the year, it lives a quiet double life. In winter, it turns into a proper ski town with people driving up from the city for weekends on the slopes, filling up the little cafes and gear shops along Main Street. But once the snow melts and the crowds thin out, Windham slips right back into being exactly what it's always been, a small, close-knit mountain community where almost nothing ever happens, at least not in a bad way. Longtime residents will tell you the same thing over and over if you ask them about safety here, that it's just not something they think about. Doors stay unlocked, kids play outside until the streetlights come on. The volunteer fire department knows most of the town by first name. And when something does go wrong, word travels fast enough that half the community shows up to help before anyone even has to ask. What's interesting about Windham is how the ski culture and the small town culture manage to coexist without one ruining the other. You'd think a steady stream of weekend tourists might bring problems with it, but the town has managed to keep its character intact. Tourists come, tourists go, and the quiet mountain rhythm underneath it all never really changes. Local crime numbers back this up too, staying consistently low year after year, even during peak ski season when the population swells. Windham proves that a town can welcome outsiders without losing the very thing that makes it worth visiting in the first place, a genuine sense of safety that doesn't disappear the moment the chairlifts start running. Number 9, Coxsackie, Greene County. Pronounced Cooksaki, this riverside town sits along the western bank of the Hudson, and it's got a personality that's hard to fake. The New York Times once called it a special place on the Hudson, and honestly, that description still holds up. Coxsackie blends serious history with a laid-back, almost artsy energy that catches people off guard. Walk through the National Historic District and you'll notice something interesting. The buildings tell a story on their own, without a single plaque needed. Riverside Park, renovated a few years back, gives residents nearly 5 acres of green space right along the water. The kind of spot where families gather on weekends without worrying about anything other than what to grill for dinner. Now here's where it gets interesting from a safety standpoint. Recent crime data pegged the town's property crime numbers at almost nothing. Just a single theft and a single burglary reported across an entire year. Think about that for a second. An entire town and barely 2 crimes worth mentioning. Or that's not luck. That's a community where people genuinely look out for each other, where a strange car parked too long on someone's street gets noticed within minutes. Coxsackie isn't hiding from the world exactly. It's just never felt the need to compete for attention. The Hudson River rolls by the same way it has for centuries. The town keeps its rhythm, and life continues at a pace that feels almost rebellious in 2026. If small-town charm mixed with genuine, measurable safety sounds appealing, Coxsackie deserves a much bigger spotlight than it currently gets. Number 8, Saugerties, Ulster County. Saugerties is one of those towns that manages to be lively and peaceful at the same time, which honestly shouldn't work but somehow does. Sitting where the Esopus Creek meets the Hudson River, this village has become something of a hidden favorite among people who've actually taken the time to visit rather than just drive past on the thruway. The historic downtown area is packed with independent shops, cozy bookstores, and local eateries that haven't been replaced by chain restaurants, which already tells you something about how this community operates. There's also the Saugerties Lighthouse, a 19th century structure you can actually spend the night in if you book far enough in advance, sitting quietly at the edge of the water like something out of a postcard. What makes Saugerties stand out on this list, though, isn't just the scenery, it's the trend. Local safety data shows violent crime rates here have been steadily dropping year after year, not by accident, but because residents and local officials have made a deliberate, ongoing effort to keep it that way. That kind of consistency matters more than a single good year ever could. It shows a pattern, a culture, something baked into how the town runs itself. Kids grow up walking to school without a second thought. Shop owners leave their doors propped open on warm afternoons. There's a version of American small town life that people assume only exists in old movies. And Saugerties proves that version is still very much alive, just quietly, without anyone making a big deal out of it. Number 7, Cold Spring, Putnam County. If you've ever scrolled through pictures of impossibly charming Hudson Valley towns and wondered whether they were real or just clever editing, Cold Spring is probably one of the towns you are looking at. Perched right on the river with the Hudson Highlands rising dramatically behind it, this place looks like it was designed for postcards rather than actual daily living. But people do live here, and they live here quietly, safely, and without much drama. The main street runs directly downhill toward the water, lined with antique shops and cafes that have survived for decades without needing a corporate makeover. What's easy to miss, though, is just how secure this town actually is beneath all that visual charm. Being roughly an hour by train from Manhattan, you might expect Cold Spring to deal with the kind of crime spillover that hits a lot of commuter towns near major cities. It doesn't. Local crime numbers stay consistently low year after year, and residents will tell you they feel more at ease here than almost anywhere else they've lived, including plenty of supposedly safe suburbs closer to the city. Part of that comes down to size. Part of it comes down to the kind of people drawn to a town like this in the first place. Folks looking for quiet over convenience. Hikers heading up Breakneck Ridge pass right through town before and after their trek, but most of them never realize just how peaceful the community actually is once the weekend crowds clear out. Cold Spring proves that beauty and safety aren't mutually exclusive. They just rarely get talked about together. Number 6, Hobart, Delaware County. Here's one most people outside Delaware County have genuinely never heard of, and that's part of what makes it worth including. Hobart carries the unofficial nickname Book Village of the Catskills, and once you understand why, the whole town starts to make sense. A cluster of independent used bookstores lines the short main street, each one specializing in something different. Rare first editions in one shop, cookbooks in another, mystery novels stacked floor to ceiling in a third. It's the kind of place where you go in looking for one book and leave 2 hours later with an armful of things you never knew you needed. With a population sitting just above 300 people, everybody genuinely does know everybody here. That's not a cute exaggeration. It's just how a town this size functions. The west branch of the Delaware River runs right past the edge of town, giving residents a peaceful backdrop for fishing, walking, or just sitting outside in the evening. Crime, in any meaningful sense, barely registers here. When your entire population could fit inside a single high school, and everyone's grown up together or married into each other's families, there's an accountability that naturally exists without anyone having to enforce it. Hobart isn't trying to be a tourist attraction, and honestly, most of the people who live here would probably prefer it stays that way. But for anyone chasing the idea of a truly hidden, truly safe corner of upstate New York, yeah, this bookish little village checks every box, and it does it without a hint of pretension. Before we keep climbing toward the safest towns on this list, take a second and hit that subscribe button if you're enjoying this. We've got plenty more hidden corners of America coming, places most people drive straight past without ever realizing what they're missing. Number 5, Roscoe, Sullivan County. Anglers call Roscoe Trout Town USA, and once you see where the Beaver Kill meets the Willowaymock Creek right at the edge of town, you'll understand exactly why that nickname stuck. This is a fishing town through and through, but even if you've never held a fishing rod in your life, there's something genuinely captivating about the pace of things here. Mornings start slow, mist rolling off the water, while a handful of early risers head down to the creek before the rest of town has even had coffee. The downtown strip is small, just a few blocks, but Every storefront feels intentional, nothing chain branded, nothing corporate. What really stands out about Roscoe, beyond the postcard scenery, is how little crime actually touches this place. Conversations with longtime residents tend to follow the same pattern. Nobody can remember the last time something serious happened here. Doors get left unlocked. Kids fish alone along the creek banks without parents worrying about who might be watching. It's the kind of trust between neighbors that feels almost old fashioned now, the sort of thing older generations talk about with a little bit of longing. Fall brings a burst of energy to Roscoe when leaf peepers and fishing tournaments roll through, but even then, the town doesn't lose its character. It just gets a little busier for a few weekends before settling right back into its usual quiet rhythm. Roscoe isn't flashy, and it doesn't need to be. It's proof that some of the safest places in the country are also some of the most overlooked, sitting in plain sight along a creek that most people only know from fishing magazines. Number 4, Phoenicia, Ulster County. Phoenicia has this strange magic where it manages to feel both undiscovered and beloved at the same time, which is a hard balance for any small town to strike. With a population well under 1,000 people tucked into the mountains along Esopus Creek, Phoenicia has become something of a favorite among people escaping the city for a weekend, but somehow it hasn't lost its soul in the process. The Phoenicia Diner anchors the town, drawing in visitors from hours away for breakfast alone, but step just a block past the diner, and you're right back in a sleepy mountain village where nothing much happens, in the best possible way. Summers here mean tubing down Esopus Creek, a tradition that's brought families back to this exact spot for generations. Winters mean quiet, snow-covered streets and mountain views that stop you mid-conversation. What doesn't change across seasons is how safe this place actually feels. Locals will tell you stories about leaving bikes unlocked outside the general store for hours, about porch furniture nobody bothers to bring inside overnight, about a level of trust between strangers that feels almost unfamiliar if you've spent any real time in a city. Part of what makes Phoenicia special is its size. It's just big enough to have character and just small enough that nothing slips past anyone's notice. Whether you're passing through for a weekend or thinking seriously about relocating somewhere quieter, Phoenicia represents that increasingly rare thing, a mountain town that grew a little bit of fame without losing the safety and closeness that made it special in the first place. Number 3, Cooperstown, Otsego County. Most people know Cooperstown for one reason, and one reason only: baseball. The National Baseball Hall of Fame sits right in the heart of this village, drawing visitors from every corner of the country every single summer. But focus only on the baseball, and you'll miss what actually makes this town worth talking about. Cooperstown sits along the edge of Otsego Lake, often nicknamed Glimmerglass, and the views alone are enough to justify a visit, even if you couldn't care less about sports history. What really deserves attention, though, is how this town balances being a genuine tourist destination with staying remarkably, almost stubbornly, safe. You'd expect a place that pulls in hundreds of thousands of visitors a year to deal with at least some of the crime problems that usually come with heavy tourism. Cooperstown mostly avoids that entirely. Families are drawn here specifically because it manages to stay kid-friendly and secure even during peak season, something local parents will happily point out if you ask them. The downtown streets stay walkable late into summer evenings, ice cream shops staying open well after dark without anyone thinking twice about letting their kids wander a block ahead. Glimmerglass State Park adds another layer, offering swimming and hiking without the crowds you'd expect at a similarly scenic spot closer to a major city. Cooperstown proves something important: that a small town can welcome the whole country through its front door every summer and still feel like the kind of place where everybody genuinely knows their neighbors once the tourists head home for the night. Before we get into the final 2 towns, and trust me, they're worth the wait, go ahead and drop a comment telling us which town on this list surprised you the most. We read every single one, and it genuinely shapes which towns we cover next. Number 2, Saranac Lake, Franklin County. Deep in the Adirondacks, Saranac Lake carries a kind of quiet confidence that most towns simply don't have. With just over 5,000 residents, it's small enough to feel personal, but large enough to have a real functioning downtown, something a lot of towns this size struggle to pull off. Surrounded by lakes and mountains on nearly every side, Saranac Lake built its early reputation as a health retreat, a place people traveled to specifically to heal, and somehow that restorative feeling never fully left. Even today, there's something about walking through downtown here that feels lighter, calmer, like the air itself is doing you a favor. Winter transforms the whole town during the annual Winter Carnival, a tradition that's been running for well over a century, complete with an actual ice palace built by hand each year along the lake. But beyond the festivals and the scenery, what earns Saranac Lake its spot this high on the list is its safety record, which isn't just good, it's remarkably consistent. Violent crime rates here have stayed below both state and national averages for years running, and homicide has sat at 0 for 5 straight years. Those aren't just statistics on a page, they translate directly into daily life. Parents let their kids bike to the lake alone. Shop owners know their regular customers by name and often by order. There's a genuine sense of community here that shows up in small, easy-to-miss ways. Someone holding a door, a stranger offering directions before you even ask. Saranac Lake earns its place near the top not because it's trying to impress anyone, but because it simply, consistently delivers on safety year after year without fail. Number 1, Lake Placid, Essex County. And here it is, the safest, most quietly remarkable town on this entire list. Lake Placid carries a kind of legacy most towns could only dream of, twice home to the Winter Olympics. Its name permanently tied to one of the most iconic moments in American sports history, the Miracle on Ice. But strip away the Olympic rings and the tourist buzz for a second, and what you find underneath is a genuinely tight-knit community of just over 2,000 people, where crime rates for serious offenses like aggravated assault and homicide sit dramatically below both state and national averages year after year, almost without exception. That consistency is the real story here. This isn't a town that got lucky for one good year and ended up on a list. This is a place where safety has become part of the identity itself, woven into how the town actually functions day to day. Mirror Lake sits right at the center of everything, framed by mountains that seem to change color with every season, drawing visitors from around the world for skiing, hiking, and that unmistakable Olympic Village atmosphere that never really faded after the torches went out. Yet for all the international attention Lake Placid receives, daily life here stays remarkably grounded. Locals leave cars unlocked in driveways overnight without a second thought. Teenagers walk Main Street after dark without their parents worrying about where they are. Shop owners still greet regulars by name, the way small towns are supposed to work but so rarely actually do anymore. Lake Placid proves something powerful, that international fame and small-town safety aren't opposites. They can exist in the exact same zip code, and the people lucky enough to call this place home get to enjoy both at once. If you're searching for real proof that peaceful, genuinely safe communities still exist in America, you won't find a stronger example than this one right here. So there you have it. 10 towns scattered across upstate New York, where safety isn't a buzzword. It's simply the water everyone's been swimming in their whole lives. If this list opened your eyes to a side of New York you never knew existed, do us a favor and give this video a thumbs up. It genuinely helps more people discover these places. And if you've actually visited or lived in any of these towns yourself, we'd love to hear your take in the comments, especially if you think we got the ranking wrong. There are plenty more hidden gems out there just like these, so make sure you're subscribed and keep that notification bell on, because the next list might just feature a town sitting closer to you than you'd ever expect.